when you're thinking about the diets that we have in the Western world now, a lot of the problems that we face is an imbalance with fats. So previously we would have a healthy ratio between omega-3 and omega-6, omega-3 being the better, if you will, omega-6 being the one we want less of. And what's happened in our current society is actually that omega-6 is creeping up, and we're reaching a point where we're kind of at equal/more.
When did your journey into nutrition actually start? Like, I'm curious.
It's an interesting question, because I think I first understood that food was a factor in wellness and life, I suppose, at a later date. I was quite unwell with a lot of like gut issues, hormone problems, but no one could really give me an answer. And I was eating very much like what I thought was a normal diet. You know, I'd have like a pancake for breakfast and then a sandwich for lunch and then pasta for dinner. And I was about 18, 19 maybe, when I was like, maybe this is not what I should be doing. And I went into the modeling world for a very short period of time. And while I was there, I would be like, oh, these girls are eating like salads and like vegetables. And obviously they may not have been doing it for the same reasons that I wanted to, but started researching, like, does my diet impact my gut health, or does my diet impact why I have acne? And from there, it just slowly started to evolve. And I was like reading and researching so many different things that suddenly I was like, oh, there's a direct correlation between what I'm eating and how I'm living my life and the symptoms that I'm experiencing. And from there, it just, everything just like escalated from there.
That's really interesting, because I was listening to one of your previous interviews and you were quite critical in the sense that you said for IBS, for example, there isn't really any information out there.
No.
And I think I agree with you, because surely it's different for everybody.
It's completely different. And I think one of the things that I have now realized is, and everyone who has kind of suffered with IBS will say similar, is it's not really a thing. It's a collection of symptoms that can't be diagnosed as something else. So, you know, some of my clients, for example, will have really bad gut issues that in the form of constipation and bloating. And then somebody else will come in and say that they've got loose stools and they're never bloated, but that's still IBS, but the symptoms are presented completely differently. But it's more of a case of just being like, you have something wrong with your digestive system. Let's just say it's IBS.
Why does everyone always seem to think that IBS is directly linked to dairy? Is it?
That's a really good question, because a lot of people do think that. I mean, myself personally, I am allergic to dairy. I realized as soon as I stopped eating it, the symptoms that I had really, really improved. But at the time when I was going through my health journey, I was unable to eat so many foods. I couldn't eat, you know, basic things like garlic and onion. That would flare me up in ways I couldn't understand. But now I'm very lucky and fortunate, the work that I've put in, I'm able to eat everything except for dairy.
Except for dairy. Yeah. But that's a big part of your, everyone's food, really.
Exactly.
So for those that might not understand as well, dairy would be like milk, cheese, yogurt.
Cheese, anything that is from a cow, basically. So this is the way I try to explain it. And going to, you know, different countries, I love traveling, and trying to explain what dairy means can be quite challenging. So yeah, butter, milk, yogurt, cheese. I think that's everything. Ice cream. Ice cream's a tougher one.
Ice cream. I think if you have IBS and you want to have ice cream, have ice cream. You need to enjoy ice cream. That's my opinion. I'm sorry. It might be a really bad opinion, sat with a nutritional coach.
You could always go with a dairy-free ice cream. That's what I do.
Okay, that's a good idea. So you don't have to suffer. But this brings up an interesting question, and correct me if I'm wrong. All over the world, people have always depended on farming. So how have so many people through evolution managed to have IBS when it seems like farming and agriculture has been the norm for every basic society?
It's a really interesting question. And I think one of the things that we look at a lot in the research that I'm doing now is like how the modern world is impacting our health and wellness. And if we look at, you know, previously with farming, for example, the quality of the crops and what was being produced was so much stronger because we didn't need so much of it. Whereas now what we've kind of done is created such a demand that we're, you know, growing crops that aren't of a similar quality. And, you know, we're spraying them with pesticides, we're filling them with chemicals and things like that, which obviously our body is not used to. And we never had that previously. So now our body's building this kind of resistance towards everything that's coming in. And of course, we're going to have reactions from it because our bodies weren't made to have those pesticides and chemicals and things like that. And in the same way, it's meaning that the quality of the food is not as good as it used to be. And, it's all very well us saying go back to our local farmers and local butchers, but a lot of us, including ourselves, we live in cities where that's not always possible. And it's also with an expense.
On that note, Eleanor, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and making time to talk to us today. We just talked about farming, and what I've realized is that the changes in farming have happened too quickly. So as our bodies have developed over millions of years of evolution, the changes that we're now having faced because we live in such big societies has happened too quickly. That means the body adapts slower.
Exactly. I think it's the same with a lot of things that I'm realizing, and especially recently with the research that I'm doing, is like, if you think about the speed of which society is changing and the speed of which we can adapt to it, it is very different. Technology is another example. But when it comes to farming and crops, our grandparents, for example, would not have had half of the variety of foods that we have now. And is that a good thing? Possibly. But is it a bad thing? Also possibly. Because they had local produce that was from down the road, which would have been a lot more kinder on their gut and digestive system. It also would have been probably organic because it was being grown by the local farmers and just a lot better for us. Whereas now what we're experiencing is mass-produced crops and ingredients that are probably from hundreds and thousands and millions of miles away that are causing us quite a lot of issues on our health.
It seems very abnormal, and it's all about the demand, I guess, but also a lot of capitalism. A lot of let's get the fruit in every season. I heard a professional say recently there are certain fruits you probably shouldn't have all the time because it's not their season. It's not their natural time to actually be eaten.
Completely. And I always use this example with strawberries. So we always think of strawberries as being, summer, Wimbledon season. But actually you can have strawberries in the UK all year round. And my big test with that is, how do they taste though? Because if they taste the same in December as they taste in June, that's a problem because they shouldn't taste the same. And realistically, when they taste the best is when they are in their peak season. And I try and advise clients and people who I speak to quite frequently to try and eat seasonally. And we're moving into the autumn months now, and there's a reason that things like carrots and figs and those darker coloured vegetables and fruits are topical and seasonal because they're what our bodies crave at those times of year. Whereas, as you say, we've become a society of very much wanting everything all of the time, whereas that's not what our body was designed for.
I don't even know if regular humans asked for that. I don't think anyone sat down and said, let's have fruit all year round. I think companies realized that they can do this.
Yeah.
Maybe because the fruit grows differently in different countries. Yeah. So they thought, can we have it in the summer in the UK? Because there's different climates in different parts of the world, obviously different time zones. But I think furthermore as well, one thing that I'm realizing is if these fruits are genetically modified, then in season or out of season, you kind of have to worry about what you're eating.
Completely. And I think that, comes back to the local farming piece, right? I mean, obviously in an ideal world, we would all love to wander to the farmer's market on a Sunday morning and all of our vegetables are from the farm down the road, but that really isn't the case anymore. So I always say, look at where you're buying your fruits and vegetables from. If you can really, try and encourage to be buying from British farmers with the crops and things like that, because at least they're in season to where we actually are, rather than relying on things coming from abroad that may potentially not have the same nutrient density and have traveled with air miles and things like that too.
Which also means that they have to have certain chemicals to keep their shelf life.
Exactly.
And if they're coming on big cargo ships, for example, and that takes days, if you're getting your bananas from Colombia and they need to get to the UK, the journey is probably from the farm to the transportation into the country, onto the big warehouse, and then onto your shelf.
Yeah.
So one thing, a myth that I've often thought about is people think that, oh, this is fresh, this banana was just put on the shelf. No, it was picked about 7 days ago.
Yeah, exactly. My biggest tip actually that I say to clients with this is actually to buy frozen, because when you're buying frozen fruits and vegetables, obviously not for everything, we prefer fresh, but blueberries, for example, if you buy frozen blueberries, they have been picked and frozen immediately. They haven't been picked, then transported, then put on the shelves, then sat on the shelf for a while. and then you buy them and freeze them yourself. Whereas if you buy them frozen, 9 times out of 10, they've just been picked, frozen, done.
Yeah, it's honestly, the deeper I go into this, the more I worry about the overall health of society. And I think to myself, I'm not a medical doctor, you're more trained than I am. I think a lot of the new diseases that we're finding can be attributed to this type of maize and corn in all of our foods, these really bad diets. And it also seems like, and this is the worst part, the more organic it is, the more expensive it is. And at a time like this, some people might not consider it that important to do a fully organic shop.
Completely. And, you know, this is something, again, that we really need to prioritize. I think, you know, organic fruits and vegetables are more expensive. They shouldn't be, but they are. And I always encourage people to look at the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. It changes every year in terms of the organic vegetables and fruits that you should encourage us, you know, try your best to buy organic. And I do that. You know, sometimes, of course, there's months where you're thinking, oh, like, I can't afford to do my entire food shop organic. I'll get the Dirty Dozen up and go, but these are the ones that I have to. And the same with the Clean 15. These are the ones that I'll be all right. You know, I'll be fine to, you know, buy them not organic, but then I might wash them when I get home with veggie wash or something like that to get those pesticides off.
Explain those two terms that you just used.
The Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. So the Dirty Dozen are 12 fruits and vegetables, and it's a list that's released in the US and the UK by authorities to basically say these are the vegetables and fruits that are either the highest sprayed or maybe the most damaged within the crops and resources.
Okay.
And there's 12, it changes each season. And you basically, you know, that list is what I would always choose to buy organic.
Yeah.
And then the Clean 15 is the alternative. That's the one that, these are the ones that the lowest sprayed, the least ones that, you know, you need to kind of be quote unquote worried about. And those are the ones that I would then say, okay, if you can't afford to buy these organic, then just buy them non-organic. But I always say with those anyway, you know, there's a really great brand that do like veggie washes and things like that. You could just spray those with to get anything that is, you know, harmful off them.
Wow. It used to be that people just picked it from the tree.
I know. Even when I look at like farmers markets and things now, and, you know, I live in London and they do parks and, you know, the local organic farmers market. Sometimes I do find myself having to think like, is this actually organic? Like, was this from a farmer's market? And it's a problem because it's a demand thing.
Thank you for watching that clip. If you enjoyed it, here's the full podcast right here on my right, maybe your left. I'm not sure how YouTube works. Or here is another clip right here. Take care, everybody. See you on the next one.